Welcome back. I'm Crispy. As you can see, I'm experimenting with different backgrounds for these videos. The one I did in my previous video was more of a neon take. I thought that went kind of well with the name of the channel, but I just love some of this artwork behind me, so we'll try this out. You can let me know in the comments if it's a little too distracting. I tried something new. I shouldn't say new. I emphasized something more in my game this week that I think I will do more of in the future. And that is, I used characters under my control to give player characters more information about the world, but not explicitly so. Not with some kindly gentleman walking up and giving this lengthy exposition about the entire history of the railroad in this town. No, nothing like that. We had a combat encounter, a fairly significant combat encounter in our session this week. And what I used is I used the this is going to sound a little morbid, but I used the NPCs under my control to show the monster's special abilities. So one of the NPCs, an ally of the party, gets snatched by the monster and thrown into this fiery portal, screaming the whole way. Another, we'll say not an ally, but a fellow combatant gets smashed to bits with another attack from this monster. And I describe that rather than saying, because what I want to avoid is I want to avoid players saying, I want to make a check to know how much I know about these monsters. Rather than do that, I'm encouraging players to use their imagination more, because I think using our imagination is going to result in a much better experience. And my hope is, as I encourage players to use their imagination and I describe what is happening to those around them, then they can fill in the blanks. And in some cases, of course, I will be forthcoming if a player's background knows, if they know something about this, or it would make sense they'd know something about that. But I'm encouraging that to come not driven by me, but driven by the players themselves, as they take that initiative and say, no, that it would make sense, I would know this about. And it's okay if they get it wrong, because maybe their character thinks that they know something about it. And this particular example of creature, opponent, hazard is slightly different. It's not going to be, it might be similar to what they thought they knew, but this one's unique. So it worked well in the sense that it wasn't me just saying, it has a breath weapon. It has a wing attack. Oh, it can crush things. It can grab, it can banish you to hell. Rather than describing that as an abstract concept, I think displaying it in the world in action is way more dynamic, and it worked well. It worked well in so as I'm trying to role play more in combat encounters, in order for the combat encounter to feel dynamic and keep it moving along quickly, it does help with the pacing and the tension in the game. When there's the players, like the ally that's just standing right next to you is all of a sudden just misted. And all that's left is one cowboy boot, and everything else is gone. And then players really start worrying about survival. Because at the end of almost inevitably, when I get feedback from players of sessions that were how should I say this? Let's call it exceptional or left an impression. It's usually sessions where it was questionable whether or not everyone would survive or anyone would survive. So the game sessions where it's more about surviving instead of just checking off, just doing fetch quests or things like that. It's always there's some perilous thing that's happening. That I think results in more memorable experiences. Other thing I want to give an update on, I had talked in a previous video briefly about my struggles with downtime and how to handle downtime. I'm staying with it. I want to get better at doing this. And so I did do okay, this big event happened, this big climax that we had worked up to. And then I did go around the table, and we did use that, what I showed in a previous video, where we borrowed the interlude system, and it worked surprisingly well. One thing that it did do, though, is it did cause some of my players to say, you know, I think I'm going to need a new character. I think this particular character, he's had his hero's journey. He's had his story arc. I'm comfortable where it is for now. And if I'm comfortable with where it is for now, perhaps the thing to do is to introduce someone new. And I thought that was great. So it was not something I was aiming for. I wasn't trying to do the interludes to just retire player characters because, you know, it's time for new blood. But that is what happened, at least in one instance, where the player had already told me, you know, I think I'm getting to the end of this particular character, and it probably makes sense for me to start thinking about someone else. And of course, now I am trying to think of conflicts, introduce conflicts, and then have organically improvised conflicts that pose significant peril. So death is very much on the table, and that does also mean that we have a higher turnover of player characters. The heroes come and go quite regularly, and I think that's not uncommon in Dungeon Crawl Classics games. I think that's to be expected, and not just in funnels. Funnels are, of course, what everyone thinks of for DCC. And we've run a number of funnels, and players typically do like funnels. If you're not familiar with the concept, every player starts with 4 peasants, and really peasants. Like these are cannon fodder in every sense of the word. And after the funnel, anyone who's still breathing could potentially become a level 1 character. It's something that is, I would say, much like in other systems, they become known for 1 or 2 components of the system, even if those aren't the main component of the system. And I would argue that as much as funnels can be fun, I think DCC is a better game beyond the funnel. I think that Weird Frontiers is a fantastic game, and it would be a shame if it was just, oh, well, we run a Western funnel in it. I think you would leave way too much on the table. In fact, as a bit of a tangent, I was talking to the players and how I'm becoming more and more disillusioned with the reward being experience points. And I'm more interested in everyone deciding what kind of game, what kind of power level, what kind of, if you want to play a more powerful characters that have had significant experiences already in life, can't we just start at that level? We don't necessarily have to grind our way all the way through for years and years. And we've done that. I have run games like that. We start at level 1 and then eventually we retire at level 20. I have done that. It can be a bit of a slog. And the problem with it is that character death becomes so taboo that the game system that employ that kind of progression, they also tend to have multiple ways of bringing characters back from the brink. And I'm not as convinced that results in the most memorable experiences. Oh, well, this is just the 17th time that I've been resurrected in this game session. I mean, yeah, it cost me a lot of gold, or whatever it is, 1,000 gold piece or 5,000 gold piece diamonds. But it's just it's like a tax. I just have to pay the tax and then I can keep going. That feels a little shallow to me now. I'd much prefer to have something that's deadly. Okay, we started at level 5 instead of level 1, but you die. Like that's, and then we go on to your character's gone. You're gonna have to make a new one. And we'll see how well you can keep this one alive, if at all. So The fast forward actually did work well. I did a year this time. I said, what happened over the course of this last year? Describe what happened with your character since this major event. There's other things that have gone on. Tell us about what those are. The other thing that's good about this is that it encourages players to use their imagination. And this is a bit of a struggle, because if we're not practicing using imagination, then it's hard. That's something I'm struggling with. And I'm not sure that there is an answer for this. If you really want to turn a game around like I do and dive deep into the role play aspect of it, there is an underlying assumption that all of us have exercised the imagination enough that we can think of things. We can imagine ourselves and in this setting. And it's not just ourselves imagining it, but we can imagine what other people like. So as they describe it, I can picture in my mind, or I can think that description that my player over here has said. I can contextualize that in my understanding of the world, and the resolution might not be so high that we know exactly how the architecture is. What I'm saying is that we're not all picturing the fiction completely the same, but we have enough imagination to fill in the gaps. And I'm wondering if there's methods of practicing imagination. I suspect that most of us start off pretty good with imagining things, and then over time we become jaded, or we don't use that. We don't have that creative outlet anymore, perhaps, and we drift away from imagining, and we're just way too grounded in the material. Oh, I can see it. I have to see the grid. I have to see the miniature. I have to see the picture. I have to have it in my senses. I can't just conjure it in my mind. But I think that the ability to imagine is going to be so incredibly important as we enter into this pretend world. We have to be able to imagine. We have to be able to suspend that disbelief and imagine, no, what if this was really the case? What if this really worked? So anyway, that's some thoughts that I had on the importance of I don't know. I think I just lost my video for a second there. I'm trying a different camera setup, and we'll see how it works. Love to have your feedback on this, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch these videos. Excited to have you along for the ride. Hopefully you've got something from this. It has at least prompted you to maybe think a little bit about what's going on in your game and how to make it better. I appreciate you watching this video, and I'll look forward to talking to you again sometime soon. Bye.